Welcome back, everybody. Today, we'll be discussing the Jordan 4 Midnight Navy. Specifically, we'll be discussing whether you should sell or hold the Jordan 4 Midnight Navy and why that is. To preface this, if you guys enjoy these types of videos regarding the market, reselling, and even info on how to acquire these limited products, be sure to subscribe and enable post notifications. This way, you're always 100% updated. Furthermore, for more urgent updates like the recent shock drop we just saw today, follow my Twitter, KeithAdam10, and personals for you. And of course, for early information before these drops actually occur, Endurance has your back, follow for restocks. For those who don't know, the Jordan 4 Midnight Navy releases on October 29th, tomorrow. Retail will be $210. Stock on these is just slightly above average for Jordan 4s. Stock on these is just slightly above average for Jordan 4s at over 160,000 pairs. In order to determine if the Jordan 4 Midnight Navy will be a fruitful hold, we will cover an estimated range of what the sneaker will settle at after the drop and when shipments come in, essentially all the pairs going into circulation, whether they're expected to increase post-drop or even hypothetically continue to decrease, along with how much specifically over specific periods of time, and finally, what type of margin are we looking at for these in terms of holding. Not the retail to resell initial margin, but rather the hold margin over X period of time. Basically, even if these do go up, are they still going to be worth your time or not? Kicking it off, let's discuss the estimated range that these should be settling at. To begin with, again, stock for these is just slightly above average, hence this shouldn't have a notable effect, but of course, if anything, it'll only help bring the price lower. On the other hand, demand is certainly very high for these, even for a Jordan 4. This is reflected in the large amount of high bids. Just yesterday, many were over $300, as well as the very notable sale volume despite the high pre-sale. I should note, though, that the StockX data that you're viewing on the screen right now is from the 27th, not today. For some reason, their database hasn't updated for this product yet. As of me recording, I'm not sure why, but the high demand is evident nonetheless, and it makes sense. The Jordan 4 in general tends to carry good demand, and this is a highly demanded colorway, being white and dark blue. Despite the retail being elevated at $210, I do still believe that these should be profitable with a decent to good margin, especially in large sizes 10 and above, bigger being the better. I also think that grade school has potential for lunch money with a subpar to decent margin. Those will be retailing for $150. But now, regarding a specific range, prices have already seen the vast majority of their pre-drop decrease since it is now the day before. Although, I am recording this a bit earlier than I usually do the day before, so we might actually be seeing a minor drop later in the day as the Flex app reservations do go out. So, this leaves the current average at about $288 for sizes 8 to 12, but of course, this is only the pre-drop average, temporary. We normally see a notable change post-US drop. This is when we normally experience what I like to refer to as the impulsivity effect. You guys should know what I'm referring to by now, as we discuss this very frequently, yet it almost always occurs to some degree. Regarding the impulsivity effect, if you haven't watched my seller hold videos before, sneaker drops specifically impact human impulsiveness significantly after an individual fails to acquire that desired product due to insufficient supply and too much demand. Therefore, on average, we normally see about a 5 to 10% increase of the pre-drop prices post-drop. Recently, we did see a 10% increase on the Jordan 1 Yellow Toe, for example, as expected. However, that 5 to 10% is not always the case, such as when a sneaker is already slightly overvalued. When it comes to these, I do feel that the current pre-sale is pretty justified given the very high amount of bids and sale volume. However, similar to the Jordan 4 Black Canvas we recently discussed, I would not say that these are too undervalued either. With Yellow Toes, for instance, a ton of pairs dropped through the shock drop, as well as an early Europe release, hence the 10% increase was to be expected since they were quite undervalued at the time. We don't really have that same situation when it comes to these, so I don't expect a minor impulsivity effect from these current prices, especially because we might actually see the price drop a bit tonight following the Flex app reservation. So with that said, I would only expect about a 5% increase post-drop, but it's still a positive impulsivity effect, which I am expecting nonetheless. Remember though, this is temporary. Now let's discuss what prices will look like once the shipments go out in the 1 to 2 week range. During this period, the vast majority of pairs will be going into circulation. As usual for general releases, I'd expect the typical 10% decrease. No notable reason to suggest otherwise on these, contrary to the Yellow Toes where we already had a ton of the pairs in circulation. This would then hypothetically leave prices at about $272, just slightly higher than the Black Canvas we recently discussed. And again, large sizes will remain the best, so those will still hover in the upper 200 range, with the smaller sizes closer to the mid 200s. And luckily, that still does leave sufficient room for profit with or without tax on the large sizes, but if you don't have tax, you might also be able to make some lunch money on the smaller ones too. But now with the average price ranges at those points in time evident, let's discuss whether they're expected to increase from the post-shipment prices or even hypothetically continue to decrease. Given that these are white and blue, a reasonable comparison that comes to mind would be the iconic military blue Jordan 4. While yes, these military blue are very high right now, it was not always like this. I remember when these first came out in 2013, these weren't exactly very hyped. I don't know how StockX has calculated the data from 2013 when they were first in their early stages, but besides the point, if you observe the more recent data like 2016 to 19, you can see that they still weren't really selling for that much. While StockX data does show the contrary, from my recollection of that period, these were pretty close to retail back in 2013 and 14, which was 160. I'd say they hovered around 200 or less from the first year. So despite the 2016 to 2019 data indicating low prices, they still technically did increase, although not very significantly. And regardless, in general, I should note that Jordan 4s have been rather consistently increasing over time, so I wouldn't expect anything different for these anyway. Hence, I am expecting these to continue increasing following their post-shipment trough. Now finally, regarding the hold margin on these, essentially, are these actually going to be worth your time, even though they are going to be increasing? While the military blue isn't a perfect comparison, of course, the colorway is quite similar. Over the many years up to 2019, before the Federal Reserve printed insane amounts of money, they really did not see much of a notable increase. However, we do indeed see that they are very, very high right now, which illustrates really solid long-term potential. When it comes to short-term, like 1 year for example, perhaps these are not exactly the best, however. Most importantly, like many recent Jordan 4s, their initial value has been starting out very high, which leaves little room for a good ROI. These are no exception to that, considering a post-drop average at over $300 is very possible. For example, if these increase to say $350 from that $300 price, that's only a 15% ROI. To achieve a 30% average, these would need to hit $400, which I think is unlikely within 1 year, but certainly possible within 2. And again, the long-term potential is quite solid on these. The military blues are super high right now, and I can certainly see the same for these in some years, but not exactly in the short term. So the main thing preventing these from being a great hold is really just their initial value. 4s have had really high values post-drop lately, which takes a ton of potential away from their ROI. Hence, I would have to rate these a 5 out of 10 hold, which is just about average, mostly their long-term value carrying them, and this is the same rating as the recent Black Canvas Jordan 4. Now, if I'm incorrect about there being no negative impulsivity effect, in fact there being a positive one, and they actually decrease post-drop, that of course would leave more room for a better ROI, potentially making these a 6 out of 10 hold, which would be above average. So, also don't forget about the grade school pairs. If those do get low enough as well, they can make for some pretty solid holds as well, like many recent grade school Jordan 4s. Personally, I will be quick selling mine, unless of course they do drop more than I expect post-drop, because of course I could very well be incorrect. In that case, I'll consider holding. Also, just a note in general for anyone considering holding any items who do have low capital, you should never hold anything in general if you don't have sufficient capital to go for as many drops as possible at your full potential without holding back. If you do need money to go for all drops, try to sell these as soon as possible during that impulsivity effect. Let me know what you guys are doing with your pairs down in the comments below. Since this is just a discussion at the end of the day, I can't predict the future. That's just my personal analysis based on the data that I've acknowledged. We have a lot of brilliant minds watching the video right now, so I implore you to leave your notions down in the comments below. But anyway, that will conclude it for today. Feel free to leave a like if you enjoyed, or perhaps if you learned a thing or two. Subscribe and hit the post notifications. This way you stay 100% updated on all hyped releases. Also, feel free to check out the links in the description below for reliable, fast, residential proxies from Kip Proxies. You could also now join eDeals with the link in the description below for only $14.99 per month. Furthermore, feel free to follow Endurance on Twitter for updates on restocks or key giveaways, and the same goes for Gargantua if you want to keep up with the progress or restocks. Last but not least, make sure to follow Keith Adam 10 and Personals for You, so you guys stay updated on all urgent info like I was going over today. With that though, I will see you guys later. Have a fantastic rest of your day.